and beg to move order number 13, that the Senate adopts the report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the Senate nominee on behalf of the county governments to the position of member of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission laid on the table of this House on Tuesday, 23rd July 2024, and further, pursuant to Article number 232B, Roman 7 of the Constitution and Section 7.2 of the Salaries and Remuneration Act, recommends Ms. Lynette Washiali Muganda and Mr. Mohammed Aden Abdi to the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Economic Planning for transmission to His Excellency the President of the Republic of Kenya, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, PhD, for consideration for appointment to the position of member of Salaries and Remuneration Commission. Mr. Speaker, sir, following the conclusion of the interview process, my committee retreated on the 22nd of July 2024 to consider interview results of and prepare the report. Mr. Speaker, in accordance with CRC Act, the committee is required to propose names of 2 persons so qualified who are of the opposite gender for consideration. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, the committee, having considered the results, resolved to recommend Lynette Washiali Muganda, a female of ID number 8837482, and Mohammed Aden Abdi, a male of ID number 27512996, for consideration for nomination to the position of member of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission under Article 232B, Roman 7 and Section 7.2 of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission Act. Mr. Speaker, Lynette Washiali Muganda holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Economics and Business Studies. She also holds a Master's of Business Administration, both awarded by the University of Kenyatta. Ms. Muganda has a wide experience in human resource management, having served as Deputy Director, Human Capital in Kenya Wildlife for 8 years, Human Resource and Administrative Officer in the Federation of Kenya Employers for 3 years, and Senior Human Resource Consultant at Deloitte and Dosh for 3 years. Mr. Speaker, she is currently a council member of Dedan Kimathi University, whereas Mr. Mohammed Abdi holds a Bachelor's of Business Management degree, Human Resource Management, from Moi University, and additionally holds a Master of Business Administration degree from the University of Nairobi, and he is a current member of Human Resource Management Professionals Examination Board. He has a wide experience in human resource management and Administration, having worked at Silicon Telmec Limited as HR Administration Officer, and he is currently working at Rightways Consulting Limited as the director, where he has served, Mr. Speaker, for the last 9 years. The committee, Mr. Speaker, is grateful to all Kenyans who expressed their interest in the position of nominee to the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, and for their cooperation during the entire selection process. The committee appreciates various agencies and public institutions which provided information requested for concerning different interviewees. The committee is also grateful to officers of the Speaker of the Senate and the Clerk of the Senate for the support we enjoyed while discharging our duties. I therefore want to request members of this House to stand behind this committee, recommend these two people for onward transmission through the Minister to His Excellency the President. Mr. Speaker, having gone through this exercise on behalf of this House and Parliament, I couldn't help, Mr. Speaker, comparing it to a similar process going on in our other House. Mr. Speaker, it concerns me that we were able to make this decision without belaboring the issue of how much a candidate was worth. I have reflected on it, Mr. Speaker, and I think asking for how much a candidate is worth, Mr. Speaker, is a waste of time. It is a waste of time unless the interviewee, Mr. Speaker, is going to be pinned down to justify that wealth. He is going to be pinned down to submit tax returns. Mr. Speaker, is going to be pinned down to how he applies that wealth. It is a waste of time, Mr. Speaker, if there is no threshold that you are speaking to. For all that Kenyans care, it looks like for you to become a minister, you must be a millionaire. Who said? I even saw, Mr. Speaker, one of the interviews struggling to look like she's rich by saying that, you know, I have this much, and my husband also has this much, and therefore, because we have brought it together, now we have this many millions, we are therefore rich enough to be... Who told people that the ministers of Kenya must be rich people? Amen. Who told them? This waste of time of asking for how much people have without following it up with intelligent interrogation is a waste of time. It must be dropped. I therefore want to commend my committee members for making this good decision. I can see I'm being asked to read the motion. I'd already read it at the beginning. But Daniel, why are you insisting? An old dog.
Senator Boni.
I know the ropes, yes.
Senator Boni. Whom are you addressing?
I am addressing the clerks at the desk.
You know you don't do that.
Oh, through you, Mr. Speaker.
No, you're not doing it through me. You went straight to them, and that's wrong. You're out of order.
Mr. Speaker, sir, through you, I've been requested...
Can you move the motion?
Yes.
Remember, last time You did not move this motion. You came up with a preliminary issue, which I ruled on.
Yes.
Now that you are proceeding with the motion, you need to move
Yes.
that motion. Once you're done, you get your seconder to second, and then we propose the question and allow your colleagues to make interventions where necessary.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, it's just that there was so much consultation at the beginning. I started by moving the motion, and I said that the Senate adopts the report of the Standing Committee on Finance. Yes? I moved it on Finance and Budget Committee of the Senate on the Senate nominees on behalf of the county governments to the position of member of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission laid on the table of the Senate on the 23rd of July 2024, 3 Tuesdays ago, and further pursuant to Article 232B, Roman 7 of the Constitution and Section 7.2 of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission Act, recommends Ms. Lynette Washali Muganda and Mr. Mohamed Aden Abdi to the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Planning for transmission to His Excellency the President for consideration for appointment to the position of member of the
that they could actually go in and try and streamline, Mr. Speaker. Because of those shortcomings, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission was set in place to make sure that all public servants are able to channel their views in terms of benefits, in terms of salaries, and in terms of the working environment, so that we can have a system and hence the direction that the Finance Committee has taken, Mr. Speaker. Madam Speaker, I've had a lot of comments of members of this House actually trying to say that unlike other processes that are ongoing in the National Assembly, you know, this process was better than others. Mr. Speaker, I want to urge the members in this House to understand that in order for us to strengthen our institutions, we have to be able, as a House and as members of this House, responsible members of this House, to also understand the process, Madam Speaker. For those who are making comments that the Finance Committee has done way better than what is happening in the National Assembly, Madam Speaker, I don't even think a report has been tabled in terms of the vetting of the Cabinet Secretaries, Madam Speaker. So let us also be fair, and let us also guide Kenyans as leaders who are responsible to understand the processes that are within both the National Assembly and the Senate before we can stand and make sensational comments just so that we can be popular out there, Madam Speaker. A report is yet to be tabled in terms of the vetting of the Cabinet Secretaries, the same way this report of the Finance Committee, we have waited as leaders in this House. We have waited for the process to take place. We have waited for the report to be tabled. And having read the report as a responsible leader, then I am commenting and seconding on that report. Madam Speaker, I want to urge the senators in this House, we are better and we are the upper house, and we should be able to understand the process and respect these institutions if we are going to trust these institutions, and if we can accord the same to the members of the National Assembly, and particularly to the committee that is actually dealing with the vetting of the cabinet secretaries, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to say that the Finance Committee of this House has actually done an impeccable job. And if you look at the applicants of all the members who wanted to be seconded to become commissioners at the SRC through the Senate, it was a huge pool of candidates, Madam Speaker, and the Finance Committee took their time, vetted all the applicants, and were able to even score them, Madam Speaker. Of the two nominees that are being presented in this House, the lady, Lynette Washiali, if I am not wrong, scored 74% as a mean score. And we have Mohammed Aden, who scored 70.29%, Madam Speaker. So perhaps what I would like to speak through is the transparency of this process within the Finance Committee. And maybe in the interests of positive criticism, maybe what we can add on in the National Assembly in terms of the vetting of the cabinet secretaries is to have a more transparent process. Maybe we can even see some of the scores that they are giving the cabinet nominees so that we can be able to say that indeed this person either performed poorly or did not perform at all, as we have seen with the nominees of this Finance Committee. Madam Speaker, I also want to speak to the fact that as we are sending these two nominees to represent and ensure that we protect the interests of the counties in the SRC Commission, Madam Speaker, I think it's important that a lot of sensitization is done in terms of what is the mandate of this commission. People associate the SRC Commission with benefits, and particularly benefits of legislators or members of parliament, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is imperative that perhaps in their working operating procedures, because they have committees within SRC that works on different mandates, Madam Speaker, I think Kenyans should also understand that it's the same SRC that has a structured system to send a representative to deal with the issue of the wage bill, Madam Speaker, to also deal with the issue of the legal and the policy frameworks, as well as the job evaluation and the salary structures that we have. Not only within the National Assembly and the Senate, but also in public service and all other sectors down to the devolved institutions that we have, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to commend the members of the Finance Committee. Madam Speaker, as the mover of the bill has stated that there are many unnecessary bureaucratic processes that we perhaps put in when we are vetting either commissioners or members of the public service, Madam Speaker. And this is an area that, as much as we are making fun of, we really need to look into, Madam Speaker. During the vetting of one of the cabinet nominees in the National Assembly, I had some complaints coming from the committee talking about how our recruitment of our KDF soldiers is still backdated, such that they are still asking for physical measures of certain body parts and things like that. Madam Speaker, I think that is the point that Senator Boni Halwale was trying to say, that in the interest of improving the efficiency, in the interest of improving our work as public servants, as leaders who are there to make sure that there is transparency and checks and balances, maybe we need to question ourselves as to why we are asking for certain information if that information is not necessarily being used for the interests of the public, Madam Speaker. Like Senator Halwale said, when you ask someone about their wealth, what's was their intended purpose. I believe the intended purpose when that particular question was structured was first of all to declare so that we can be able to, as those who are watching you, to check if you are stealing any monies from the public coffers, but also so that we can check that even as you are creating all this wealth, because we have seen many cabinet nominees increasing their wealth over 100 million, Madam Speaker, in a year. Personally, I can tell you my wealth has gone down within this year. So when we are putting those measures, we should also be able to sensitize the public that perhaps we are asking, because we also want to go to their KRA portals to see how much of that percentage was remitted as taxes, Madam Speaker. I think if we do not have proper structures of checks and balances, then we end up being a house of talking and just creating nonsensical bureaucratic measures that are not needed in terms of vetting, Madam Speaker. I would want to add my voice on that and say that perhaps also the Finance Committee that has done a good job, maybe when it comes to issues of vetting and deciding which nominee they are going to put in a commission, why didn't we have that televised, Madam Speaker? Why didn't we have that so that we could follow, so that we could have listened to our nominees, Lynette and Mohammed, we would have been able to understand how the committee actually decided on these two people. So maybe a lesson for the Finance Committee is, as much as you're criticizing the National Assembly, a point to take is that more transparency, and I believe we have the measures, we have the systems, in Bunge Towers, we can be able to televise some of these things that are happening in the committee. Because I was also a bit curious as to how the other members performed with regards to these final ones who were shortlisted. Madam Speaker, with those remarks, I want to encourage, Madam Speaker, I want to encourage Kenyans who are out there. We have a lot of these kind of opportunities that seem to be passing even the young Kenyans because they are not aware, Madam Speaker. And maybe a lesson to the Finance Committee is how to put out that information that we are looking for a commissioner to be able to go and protect the interests of the counties, to be able to sit in SRC. If that information can be put out publicly and maybe sent to our young generation, like the Gen Zs, so that they can also get an opportunity, even if they don't make it to the final list, but an opportunity to participate in the process, Madam Speaker. If you look at the age of the nominees, you will see that both are senior citizens. And I say this in jest because we need to get to a point where we are having more youth participating and being able to come to the table where the decisions are being made. Madam Speaker, in the interest of time, I want to conclude, but before I conclude, I want to say that since we have seen, and I don't know whether this will be taken as a recommendation, but since we have seen that the systems of Senate, that the committees of Senate are actually very effective and efficient, Madam Speaker, perhaps this is an opportune time to have a conversation as to why the Senate is not involved in vetting cabinet secretaries or all other nominees that are sent to the National Assembly. And if it is because it is pegged on a standing order or the Constitution, Madam Speaker, that is why we are here as legislators. I believe that this House can add good inputs in terms of vetting. As you can see, the Finance Committee has proven again and again that we are good at this and our processes are transparent. And I believe that some of us also, Madam Speaker, would be able to pose certain questions. Madam Speaker, you know, on Sunday I was listening to the nominee, Cabinet Secretary nominee of gender, Madam Speaker, and I asked myself, maybe it was an issue of lack of preparedness, maybe it was an issue of mismatch in terms of what she was told to prepare for and what they were asking. I don't know what the issue was, but Madam Speaker, had we been sitting there as representatives of the Senate, we would be able to demystify why our cabinets engage in how maybe we can better our processes by referencing the current ongoings in the National Assembly. Madam Speaker, if I am out of order, I withdraw.
Gloria, maybe what I would guide you is that since the process is ongoing and we would not want to put the cart before the horse, I believe the report is not yet done. The determination is still pending before the House, and comments on the floor of this House could as well give an impact on the mind of the interviewing panel. So the best is to leave that issue out in your debate until it's determined by National Assembly, when then it becomes open for us to also debate upon it. So please be guided accordingly, and for the time being, you can withdraw it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I definitely do hope that the comments I have made will impact the committee. However, I withdraw.
We do not want those comments. Just to clarify, these comments should not be the ones that are guiding that committee. That House is independent and should objectively make its own finding and verdict. They are competent men, ladies and gentlemen, honorable members who are superintending over that matter. So they have the capacity to determine, to prepare a report, give us the report, upon which we will be able then to debate on it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand guided. I wish to conclude by saying that we need to be responsible enough to make our processes efficient, Madam Speaker. My point was that as senators who are watching the vetting, Madam Speaker, there are a lot of glaring questions in terms of the processes, and perhaps what I was trying to shed some light on is that maybe a few notes could be taken from the Finance Committee, and maybe, Madam Speaker, the conversation that I'm trying to forcefully introduce to this House is how does the Senate at one point interact with that process or is able to give input, Madam Speaker. However, having said that, I want to conclude by saying that I proudly second this motion and support this report, and I do hope that once we have the two nominees approved and they start their work, Madam Speaker, they will remember that as Senate, we are there to protect the interests of the county, and Madam Speaker, that they should also remember that their nomination should guide and help protect the interests of the counties as commissioners within the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. I submit. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, I propose the question that Senate adopts the report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the Senate nominees on behalf of the county governments to the position of the member of Salaries and Remuneration Commission laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 23rd July 2024, and further pursuant to Article 232B(7) of the Constitution and Section 7(2) of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission Act, recommends Ms. Lynette Washiali Muganda and Mr. Muhammad Aden Abdi to the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Planning for transmission to His Excellency the President for consideration for appointment to the position of member of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. Honorable Senators, the Motion is open for debate, and I will ask Senator Chirarike Samson Kiprotich to take the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. From the onset, I want to laud the Committee of Finance and Budget. I know it's one of the busiest committees.
And before you proceed, I think it's important I guide the House that the law requires nomination of a recommendation of 2 candidates, a man and a woman, and the President will appoint one of them. Thank you. May proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for that guidance. I was to indicate, but it is important you did. Madam Speaker, I want to support and say the Finance and Budget Committee has done a tremendous job, a good job. For this, I think this report is well done, well captured, Madam Speaker. I think apart from the Senate County Public Accounts Committee, the second busiest committee is Finance and Budget. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have seen credentials and the role of SRC, Madam Speaker. Let me say the following. Of course, under Article 230, the role of SRC cannot be gainsaid. It is very critical because now the decision of review of civil servants' salaries, which we are being told today, Madam Speaker, out of the revenue we collect as a country, Madam Speaker, 1.1 trillion goes to public servants in this republic. Therefore, the role SRC plays is very critical, Madam Speaker. And I've seen SRC has not been taken lightly the comments we make about their work. I have even suggested in the past that SRC should be a part-time commission because their work is not 8 to 5, Madam Speaker. Their work is to review periodically the salaries and remuneration and personal emoluments of public servants and state officers across this country, as was envisaged in Article 230. In fact, we should be looking at possibility of reducing the number of SRC commissioners in this republic, Madam Speaker, so that we are also, because if we are spending 1.1 trillion on salaries, personal emoluments for state officers, Madam Speaker, for civil servants, it is unfair because these civil servants, majority of Kenyans are not employed by a government, Madam Speaker. And therefore, even as we approve or as we transmit this motion, Madam Speaker, for the Minister of Treasury, of course, as we wait for the report of the National Assembly on the vetting exercise, of course, the CS nominee of Treasury, John Badingongo, should, if they get opportunity, to ensure that these people we approve give value to the offices that we are talking about. And therefore, in fact, SRC, Madam Speaker, has not been helpful in advice. By the way, if the reading, Madam Speaker, and you are a very senior lawyer in this republic, Madam Speaker, and Secretary General Emeritus, who ensured that you midwife the current government, Madam Speaker, it cannot be gainsaid. The work of SRC is to advise. I don't know where they got these powers. They have arrogated themselves powers to set the salary. It's not their business, Madam Speaker. And we have sat, Madam Speaker, they have never assisted us. Look, for example, at UHC, Universal Health Coverage in terms. We spend hours here. They told us they will work with the Council of Governors to confirm under permanent and pensionable terms of UHC in terms, Madam Speaker. Who served this country as true heroes when we have a COVID of 2020? They didn't assist. We have had push and pull over the issue of members of County Assembly, the MCS. Madam Speaker, their personal emoluments, their welfare, Madam Speaker, but they have done nothing to ensure, Madam Speaker. And you know, under the labor laws, the law does not allow anybody to have their salary cut. It is never practiced anywhere in the world, Madam Speaker. We have told them, Madam Speaker, can you advise the country on the issue of welfare of members of county assembly, Madam Speaker? We have insisted, we have sat through the AMCA, Madam Speaker. SRC has been no show. We have sat with the CAF, Madam Speaker. We have even, you remember, the intern doctors that demonstrated for the longest time possible. SRC could not advise the country, Madam. It is their domain to give a practical, implementable with the current, Madam. You saw the embarrassment that they wanted to put members of, and I suspect SRC was part of the people who are inciting Gen Z in this republic, Madam. Because when there were protests in these countries, SRC went and issued a circular of increasing salaries of members of parliament and other state officers. If we had not rejected, Madam Speaker, tungesalamiwa with these Gen Zs, they have embarrassed us. It means they are not having their work cut out. They don't follow what they should be doing as SRC, Madam Speaker. It was embarrassing. They embarrassed the presidency. They embarrassed the state officers, members of parliament, when the country is going through hard economic times, Madam Speaker. Why would you want to increase the salary? And it embarrasses us, Madam. We in fact, I propose that through your office, and through the head of public service, SRC must give us unreservedly apology to the country of the Kenya and state officers for